Okay, so here goes. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the book club. This is a Sunday treat, isn't it? Coming to the book club, talking about books, literature that thrills you. Now, recently, we've had a lot of contemporary writing being discussed, and that's hardly surprising because it's just emerged, it's current, there's an urgency about it. We want to talk about it, and we want to talk about it now, and so we have. And in fact, we have a couple of authors coming up who have just published, and that's wonderful. But I love going back to the classics every now and then. These are books that have stood the test of time, right? They have proved themselves. And a text like The Taming of the Shrew, which has gone through so many rereadings and reinterpretations. And in the age of feminism, a character like Kate, well, I'm sure Snober is going to show us how you can look at Kate afresh and read new things into the play. And of course, Shakespeare being the ultimate dramatist, we never know what he's thinking, do we? So that text is out there in the world. We are reading it. And hey, today we're going to hear what Snober makes of it. Now, about Snober. So when I asked her to give me information for the flyer, she wrote a very businesslike, matter-of-fact sentence about herself, saying that she is head of the Department of English at St. Peter's College. And yes, of course she is. But she is so much more than that. So I'm going to let you find out how very good a presenter she is, how exciting she is, how interesting she makes everything, how she manages to have new takes on just everything that comes her way. So if I said that talking about books on a Sunday evening is a treat, when you have Snober leading the discussion, it's a very special treat. So Snober, over to you.
Thank you, Mohini. Thank you to the book club. Thank you for all you wonderful people being interested and caring enough to come. I want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm a literature teacher. I'm not a book club expert. So I come here and as you heard me ticking my son off, I've got a lecture right now. I don't know how to do it any other way. We literature teachers have a tendency, my husband always makes fun of us. We see more into the text than the poor author even saw into it. I want to start with this tribute to women. Some of you might have seen it circulating on the web or WhatsApp or whatever. It's a pretty sad comment on how things haven't changed for women all these years. But I also want to say that in all our discussions, and I will have a little bit of a Gyani lecture, we mustn't forget that Taming of the Shrew was, at that time, it was not controversial in a certain way. It was hysterically funny. And it still is if you watch it performed. It's when we do this sort of dissecting and discussing that sometimes we lose out on, the sheer comic timing and things like that. But having said that, my students, before we studied the play, we watched the movie 10 Things About You That I Hate. And, my husband likes to be very macho, so we sat together. And I said, see, I'm telling you now, it's one of those romedies, romantic comedies. And you'll pretend like you hate it, but you love these chick flicks. So he said, and he sat down and he loved it. So when my girls saw 10 Things About You That I Hate, and then we kind of did the play, the beginning part, they got a shock. They didn't expect what was coming at them. But the important thing is to think about which of the stories remain with you. So I'm going to begin with this.
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درختای فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگهای بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه های بیوقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه، برای چهره ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزا، برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای این همه برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خونه های پوشالی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی، برای غرصای اعصاب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی.
So for women and for freedom, I'd like to believe that behind Taming of the Shrew, somewhere, what's the message that's being sent out is that it's for women and for freedom in its strange ways. The poster itself, gives you an idea. This is Shakespeare's house at Stratford-upon-Avon. For those of you who have been, it's charming. And, you pay a lot of money to go inside. And then when you go inside, there's like this center square and you can watch live performances. And then they take you through the house and you look at how, his parents lived, his business. And then you pay a lot of money to buy a little book which tells you all of this stuff. And the reason why I'm telling you that is that we must remember that Shakespeare is a commodity. England made a lot of money marketing Shakespeare. And having said that, does that take away from the pleasure that we get from Shakespeare? A lot of people argue that, why are you still studying Shakespeare? So we'll think about that. This is the Globe Theatre. Also for you to, many of you know that Shakespeare at his time wasn't elitist. He was, popular. He was like David Dhawan, or he was like Mani Ratnam, or, any one of those people. He came as a young lad seeking his fortune, starting out as an actor and making so much money that he could actually buy his share in the theater, in the playhouse. This is, of course, a restored version of the Playhouse. When you go inside, and many of you might have been there, and the exciting dynamics of Elizabethan and Shakespearean theater is that in its own way, it's so intimate. The boundary lines between, we talk about the fourth wall when you stage a play. This barrier between you and the audience it's not like that. It was very intimate. They have this joke when you go to the Globe, and they say that people came with buckets of, rotten potatoes and, rotten eggs. And if your performance wasn't up to the mark, they, stone you with those rotten vegetables. But equally, they would engage with you and they would respond to you. You can see this is the pits where the poor people would be. And then, of course, you have along the side where the richer people would sit. But what's important is that they all came to the theater. It's not like it is anymore in India or in many parts of in India especially, it has become very elitist in the sense that you're not going to be sitting next to your maid or your driver watching a play. So it really is a testimony to how popular Shakespeare was, how he reached out to everybody. But in a strange way, it also is a testimony to how much culture was part of their lives. Equally disturbing is that if there was a hanging, people would, go to see the hanging, some out of fear, some just went, or bear baiting and, dreadful things like that as well. But the whole excitement, what we do here, of course, is important, but we must not take away from the excitement of going for a play. We buy our tickets, we choose our seats, we get all dressed up, when we're walking over there, we're thinking about how we're going to get into another zone. And then this is what we see. I'm never tired of seeing this video. All the masala, all the nach, all the Ghana, all the, the melodrama into, a Shakespearean play. And as Mohini says, he is the most dramatic of all dramatists. She was the one who taught me that, because you never really know whose side he's on. And he always gives the most powerful speeches, the most beautiful speeches to his most villainous characters. I mean, Iago, Shylock, all of them. So, just to put it out there to all of you, why do you think we should study Shakespeare? I mean, seriously, half of us don't even understand what he's saying. It takes so long to sort of, decipher that. Some of the stuff is dated. Why are we studying it? We should be doing contemporary stuff. I was supposed to talk on Trevor Noah and Born a Crime, but I said, they don't need me for that. They're smarter than me. They can figure that out. Let me talk about Shakespeare. There's a little background stuff that maybe I could give them because it's my subject. So why do you think we should study Shakespeare? Or would anybody like to say what Shakespeare means for them?
Fabulous language.
Can I come in?
Fabulous language, great drama, and I think universal archetypes.
Okay, universal archetypes. He is famous for his characters, and it may be like hundreds of years later, but I agree with you. When I want to think of with all due respect, and I'll probably be like that, an angry man dealing with, failing abilities, wanting validation, it's King Lear. When I want to think of somebody needy and somebody insecure and somebody wanting, feeling, because of that threatened and marginalized and then doing terrible things, I think of Othello. Definitely. When I think of young lovers, it has to be Romeo and Juliet. So yes, the language, the poetry. I always told my students, when I was young and I'd get angry with my father, or I couldn't say the things I was really thinking. So I'd whip out Shakespeare, and he insulted ever so beautifully. So I'd mutter about a thief with a smiling cheek and an apple with a rotten core, and my father would say, "What are you saying? What are you saying?" I was like, "Oh, it's Shakespeare." All right. So yes, beautiful language. Anybody else?
His insight into human emotions, the human condition, what we literature students term it to be.
Absolutely, it's insane. I mean, things like reverse psychology. We're going to do that with Taming of the Shrew. Every mother will learn that if you tell your daughter, don't date that boy, she will date that boy. But if you tell her that, it's okay, you can, then she's going to realize what an ass he is and dump him. So yeah, reverse psychology and so many other things. To move on to the next slide is, I said I'd give you a little bit of Gyani stuff. A lot of people don't take comedy seriously enough. Because, and partly, we literature people, we grew up with Aristotle and his Poetics, and he talks about tragedy, serious things of magnitude, kings and queens, a catharsis, and all these important things. But, hey, and linking to Trevor Noah, to think about things, and laugh is not easy. It's actually very serious. And of course, when we think about comedy, it is a happy ending. There is generally a marriage and a feast, but also it's deeply political, and there is a history of comedy where the genre has changed. And that a society is evolved when we are allowed to laugh at what is happening in government or in society. Like, I'm going to be politically incorrect at multiple levels, but hey, I can get away with it because I'm talking about America and Donald Trump. And I was horrified when, they elected Donald Trump. But then I was horrified and yet delighted by the way in the public sphere people could say what they want, and that tells you that in a way it's a progressive society. There is, not much silencing to a certain extent. Whereas just now, I looked at the paper this morning, and in Russia, they put in hundreds of people in jail because they wanted to grieve and protest over one of the opposition leaders who died in jail. So yeah, comedy is a testimony to how evolved the society is. It is, of course, dramas linked to the festival of Dionysus. I always say it reminds me of the Ganesh festival. There is this procession, there's laughter, there's dancing, and of course they bitao Dionysus in the pandal, all right, and then they have days, all through the night they will watch plays. It is a platform where people of all classes will mingle, which is important. Comedy typically will go from confusion to order, from ignorance to understanding, from separation and fighting to union, from couples not having children to be able to have children, from being single to married. And of course, you can have realistic comedy and then you can have romantic comedy. I'm going to show you a quick video about the plot, all right, and then I would like y'all to tell me how you feel about the whole thing.
A beggar gets drunk and collapses outside a tavern. He's discovered by a lord and his followers, who all decide to play a prank on him. When Sly wakes up, they tell him that he is a rich lord with a beautiful wife and invite him to watch a play, to which he agrees, although he struggles to concentrate through it. The play begins with a young gentleman named Lucentio, who arrives in Padua with his loyal servant Tranio. They notice a nobleman called Baptista Baptista, who has two very different daughters. Bianca, the youngest, who is beautiful and obedient, and Katharina, the eldest, who is loud or shrewish. Lucentio immediately falls in love with Bianca. Bianca already has two suitors, the elderly Gremio and the younger Hortensio. Baptista declares that Bianca cannot marry until her elder sister has a husband, which makes the two men very depressed, as Katharina is seemingly unlikely to attract a suitable mate. Hortensio's friend, Petruchio, arrives in Padua declaring that he needs a rich wife. Hortensio suggests that he meet Katharina. In a flash of wit and quick exchanges, Katharina and Petruchio meet and, depending on how you interpret the scene, share a lot of chemistry. Petruchio calls her Kate and concludes that he will tame her and make her his wife. Katharina says she'd rather see him hanged than go to church with him. Nevertheless, Baptista agrees to the wedding. In the meantime, Lucentio, now disguised as Cambio, a schoolmaster, manages to seduce Bianca, who agrees to marry him. At last, the day of Katharina's wedding arrives, but Petruchio is nowhere to be seen. Katharina grows angry and refuses to wait around all day. When Petruchio eventually turns up, he's dressed completely inappropriately, bringing shame upon himself and his new bride. Petruchio takes Katharina to his home, denying her requests for food and clothes, and keeping her up all night with noise and biblical recitals. He even insists that she call the sun the moon. Tired and fed up, Katharina agrees with her husband. When they arrive at Bianca's wedding banquet, the three men place a bet on who has the most obedient wife. So they each send a servant to call their spouses to them. First, Lucentio dispatches his servant to fetch Bianca, who quickly returns with the message that she is busy. Next, Hortensio sends a servant to ask his wife to come to him. He returns to say that his wife insists that her husband go to her. Finally, Petruchio sends his servant to command Katharina into the chamber. She comes straight away, to the utter surprise of everyone in the room. She then drags the other two women along, and he declares, "Come on and kiss me, Kate." They win the bet, as everyone else looks on in utter shock.
All right. So, what do you feel about this? I mean, what sort of strikes you as young, powerful women? Hi, Usha.
Well, I think the things that, the way he treats her, starving her and all that, and it's horrible, just ghastly.
Anybody else?
Yes, there is a view advanced by a neo-Kantian entitled, Godard. Godard says that at the end, things turn out to be different because Bianca becomes a Kate and Kate becomes a Bianca, and the roles are reversed. And then he says further that when Kate, says that he is a lord, actually she is lording over him. So she is like a clever woman who had learned that by letting a man feel that he is a lord, she becomes a lord. And Bianca is a fool in that sense. And the whole idea, I was a little surprised by the whole argument. After all, it's a late 40s, or around 1960s book, and Bradley's influence is still there, and he's going deep into psychology. And the point is, in this play, everything is topsy-turvy. You get the opposite of what you expect. And after all, what's the purpose of the induction? The induction shows the same kind of topsy-turvy situation. So I think he has a point. I wouldn't fully agree with him. And I do remember there was a production in Africa, about which I heard, in which the girl acting Kate came in front of the audience at the end and said, "This is what it was then, but now it's no longer the case." And he makes a point, which is very valid, I think, that Shakespeare is a feminist. He's a feminist of sorts, and Shakespeare is always trying to show his women is stronger than his men. You perhaps do know that one of the one of those writers who loved this play was Bernard Shaw. And Shaw also has different views. I guess.
Sir, I completely agree with you. But a student of mine, and we are all biased towards Shakespeare. So, of course, I teach the play like that. And I say at the end, Petruchio is actually given Catherine the chance to, show all those nasty women their place, and he's given her a voice. But a student of mine told me that, no matter what you say, ma'am, I still feel that in a way, Catherine loses a great deal of who she is, towards the end of the play. What do you feel about that?
But the point is it worth preserving what she was?
The point is that also, who really was she? Sometimes that crusty outside is not who she is. I'm going to share the video of the young contemporary movie, which my girls recommended, which was a big hit. What I want to appreciate about that young movie is that it brought in an aspect which I did not think of the earlier time, which is this is a girl, or this is my very sophisticated drawing of the entire map of the play, which I'm not going to tell you about. What I didn't think about is that, Catherine is a young girl who's lost her mother. Of course, kids will act out. There's no maternal figure over there. Then, of course, the classic binaries that we have, good girl, bad girl, fair girl, dark girl. And by dark, I don't mean dark-skinned. Of course, Sinasa talked about the opening scene, which is the induction scene. But another thing that, to think about is the way poor people were treated at that time. It's okay for a rich lord to play a joke on a poor guy and trick him into thinking that he's rich and then kind of just leave him at the end. Of course, these are things that are supposed to bother you. And I think that's what Shakespeare wanted. I think he wanted us to go home and to feel bothered. That's what art should do. It should bother you. So I'm going to show you this quick video.
It's a widely known fact that the Stratford sisters aren't allowed to date.
For every girl who's ever hoped.
Daddy, as you know, it's the prom.
Every guy who's ever tried.
You never give up, do you?
Was that a yes?
No!
And anyone
You're concentrating awfully hard considering it's gym class.
who's ever been taken completely by surprise.
Not as vile as I thought you were.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Which one do you like better?
Rated PG-13. Starts March 31st.
I think what I like about this is that it reminds us that this is a love story. We sometimes forget that, it is a love story. And Shakespeare is, I'd like to believe, serious about love. The next video that I showed them is, of course, the classic one, which is Richard Burton and Liz Taylor.
His mission was simple.
To find a fortune and to woo a wife.
Her beauty and wealth were undeniable.
Hearing of her gentle modesty, her affability, and mild behavior.
All things living, a man's the worst.
He had to make her his own.
Have you not a daughter called Katerina, fair and virtuous?
I have a daughter, sir.
Richard Burton. And Elizabeth Taylor.
I'm born to tame you, Kate.
Is it possible?
Give their real-life romance
It is incredible to believe how much she loves me.
a Shakespearean twist.
Any man is such a fool as to be married to hell?
My tongue will tell the anger of my heart.
I will marry you.
I'd rather die!
If the police didn't come and marry,
Wilt thou take Caterina to be thy lawful wedded wife?
The ring. The ring. The ring.
Caterina. Caterina, wilt thou take Petruchio to be thy lawful wedded husband?
I will not!
Ecco coniungo vostri matrimoni nomen Patri, Figli e Spiriti Santi.
Romeo, draw forth thy weapon.
So yes, the structure of the play, I'm trying to change slides. A few things that I wanted to sort of talk about as well. This is the first, the first folio is in 1623. That is the published version. The structure of the play is complex. Aristotle would not approve because it has a main plot and a subplot. Aristotle said you should have one unity of action. The play functions as a play within the play. So you have the induction scene where you have this drunk Christopher Sly, who doesn't want to pay his bill at the tavern and falls, into a drunken stupor, and a lord comes and takes him to his manor. And, says that you've been dreaming all these years, and actually you're a lord, and one of the boys is dressed up to be his wife. And then they watch this play. And the play, as Sinasa said, mirrors much of what happens in the induction scene. Your act one is your exposition, which is Baptista, the father says that I will not permit my younger daughter to get married until the elder daughter gets married first. You have Petruchio coming. He's a young boy who's, come into his inheritance. His father's passed away. He's looking for a wife, but he wants a rich wife. He makes no bones about it. It is a very materialistic time. You're going to see that. But having said that, later on, you kind of come to feel that at least the honesty of Petruchio is preferable to the deception that the other people seem to engage in. You have this very, very intense scene between Petruchio and Caterina. There's a lot of clever repartee, where, you can get all the sexual tension over there. And then there is, of course, the wedding scene. In the play, You don't see the wedding scene. It's reported, and it is very funny. He comes in completely drunk. It is reported that he imagines that the priest is flirting with Katharina, and he then throws wine, threatens to beat people, and eventually will not let her stay for the reception and the family dinner, and he carries her off. You have this powerful soliloquy where he explains to the audience that what he's going to do is it was the sport of kings at that time. And even till date, if you go to Warwick Castle, you will sit there and they will show you hawking, where I have a picture where he will send out his hawk. He will unmask unmask the hawk, send it out flying right over your head. And what a magnificent wingspan it has. And then he will call his hawk and she will come. You mustn't look at it in the sense of taming. Now, I have 2 doggies, and I am one of those, don't judge me. I walk my dogs without a leash, and I walk with this absolute confidence that my dogs will trust me and will obey me, and I just have to say their name and they will come immediately and they will stop immediately. And it is this wonderful trust and bond and love that we have for each other. Most of the people in the audience would be aware of that. It was a sport of kings, and the relation, those of you who grew up with the story of Alexander and his horse, Bucephalus, nobody could tame that horse. And if the horse was acting out, the horse was, they were threatening to put the horse down. And then Alexander realizes that the horse was just scared of its own shadow. So he turns the horse around so he cannot see his shadow, and the horse calms down. And the most beautiful relationship then develops between Alexander and his horse. I want you to keep that kind of relationship in mind when he talks about this taming process. And of course, the testing of the taming process will happen in Act 5 with the ultimate wager, as they will all call their wives. And these wives were being really mean to Catherine before that. And then, the men will, like it happens in our parties sometimes, the men will stay to drink and the women will go into the other room. And he will, shut the door, no, Baba? And he will, they will call their wives, and 2 of them will not come. And Catherine comes, and she is given that chance to tell these nasty women, how nasty they are. I wanted to quickly talk about this, which is the sources. My husband was talking about some, Hindi movie director. My husband and I are poles apart. He loves Tamil, Tollywood, and whatnot. And he said, oh, I love this director, but then I heard that, everything he does has been copied from the West. So I said, that's really interesting, because when we study Shakespeare, we never say Shakespeare was plagiarizing or copying. In fact, we study it academically as sources, and legitimize all the copying that went on. All right. So whenever you study Shakespeare academically, you will study his sources. All right. But having said that, a very sophisticated thinker, Derrida, says that there is no original writing. Everything we do is actually this network of, this wonderful world of, texts and literature and everything. So taming stories were very, very common at that time. I mean, we all grew up with What Are Little Girls Made Of, that nursery rhyme. What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and all things nice, that's what little girls are made of. And what are little boys made of? Snails and tails and puppy dogs, snails and pails and tucking puppy dog tails. That's what little boys are made of. So this is a tradition that has been so long, all right. Also, it's very interesting that the play is set in the landscape that Shakespeare would have grown up in, all right. This is your hunting lords, this is your fat tavern alewives, all right. They would have had players coming like that, putting up plays. You see it in Hamlet. This anticipates Hamlet. You also have this festival of misrule, which manifests itself in so many ways in different cultures. You have it beginning in Rome, where, there is this week where, this day where everybody can go crazy. And, you play, the Lord becomes the servant becomes the master. Another big thing called Bakhtin called this a carnivalesque. The carnivalesque is where you break down these boundaries. And the king of the carnival is actually, someone who's crowned from the ordinary crowd. But having said that nowadays we do what is known as culture studies. So some people find it problematic because you don't just look at the text. It's called the textuality of history and the historicity of a text. The textuality of history is that history is a narrative that must be analyzed like any work of literature, whereas the historicity of the text is that the text will open doors into that time. And therefore, if you go to the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon, you will see this sort of a installation over there. And this is what was done to women who were considered to be shrews. People who were scolds, fighting wives, they had this thing put on their tongue, like a metal thing. You can see it in the first picture over here. Or they, if you look over here, it was clapped onto their tongue so they could not speak. You also have this thing put in their mouth. This is even more disturbing. You could parade your wife through the town with this cage on her head, or this barrel. This is taken from the latest Arden's edition, which is very merciless against the play and calls it horrible things. But the previous Arden's edition is much kinder to the play. I personally love the play. I want to, since I showed you something disturbing, I thought I'd show you something fun. I think what you have to contrast in this play is that you have, in all these disguises, you have Petruchio's friend Hortensio, who will dress up as this music teacher. And the guy can't sing to save his life. And Catherine cannot suffer fools. So when she sees this idiot trying to teach her music, she will take the lute, which is the guitar, and she will break it on his head. And he will come out, and it's quite comic because he'll be wearing it like that. But on the other hand, you have this cockerel Petruchio, sort of wooing Catherine. And of course, in all of this sort of, love-hate conflict, all right, you find Petruchio's wooing of Catherine far more sincere than, and I'm going to show you 10 Things I Hate About You, the portrayal of that. So I think it's lovely.
Just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'd be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At long last, love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. Trust in me when I say, oh,
think why I want to show this clip is for you to understand that Petruchio is, for all of his sort of nonsense and madness and masti, he is very charming. She does fall in love with him, and I think the lines "trust in me when I say," I think that's what you need to take away from the whole thing, that the trust that develops between them, which manifests itself in that last speech, and everybody talks about the content of the speech, but you need to look behind that, which is the wonderful teamwork between the two of them, where working together, she wins him the bet. She gets him a double dowry, all right? And they are like, if you look at it, like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of team, together they sort of, con everybody. But quickly to take you through some of the key points, there is the psychological transformation. And as Sinatra said, I think also, I remember when I took my son to boarding school, and they gave us this talk, and they said, teenagers, they will push the boundaries, all right? But it's for us to help them grow up and realize, where we have to draw them. So I think that's what the transformation is. Catherine is this angry girl, her mother's dead, her father prefers this phony, goody two-shoes younger sister. Let's not blame the younger sister. She's kind of put in that situation as well. Plus, Catherine is that, at that age, she's this acting out teenager. And then she meets somebody who kind of makes her realize that she doesn't need to do that kind of stuff, But the thing is that everybody does things differently. And I think that's what Shakespeare brings. Having said that, there is, and which of us, all of us happily married couples, which of us have these dull lives where there is no conflict? We're constantly fighting with each other, and that's where all the electricity comes from. But there is violence in the play, and to deny that is, doing an injustice to the play. There is violence at multiple levels. This is a picture of, taming of your hawk. A shrew is another word for a hawk. It's not just a bad-tempered lady. There is this battle of the sexes. There is also, conflict between young and old people. Also, how elderly people are constantly victims to young, scheming people, something to think about. My mother's an elderly lady, and I realized that rather than protect elderly people, most people try to con them. There's also, metamorphosis, change, disguise, who's really who in the play. But education, the whole taming thing in education. I want to say that Baptista, all right, I want to say a few things that I admire about him, that when Petruchio is making the transaction about marriage, let me say something good about Petruchio. He asked straight up, how much dowry will you give, Baptista says what he will give. But then Petruchio says something very important. He says that if I die, all my money will go to Catherine. The entire dower will go to Catherine. And that's a really fair transaction, because in those days, when the husband died, the money did not go to the wife. It would go to the eldest. I mean, we've seen it even in much later on in Pride and Prejudice. Goes to the eldest son in the family and things like that. So he says, all the money, if I take, I will give. All right. So that's full marks to Petruchio and Shakespeare. Baptista will say that, hey, you've forgotten the most important thing in this whole thing. And Petruchio says, what is that? And he says, to make Catherine fall in love with you. So this, in all our sort of, ranting, central to this play is love. All right, make no question about that. And also at that time, women weren't really educated, but Baptista will hire people to educate his daughters, But I want you to tell me, what are the things that bothered you? And I'm going to let Sanasa say what he wanted to say last time. So I'm going to allow him to, and anybody else after that.
Snober, I have a lot to say after your brilliant presentation. You did a wonderful job, but let others speak first, then I'll give my points.
I think actually that would be a good idea because Sinha sir will have wonderful things to say. If anybody, and so much to learn from him. So if anybody else would like, Shraddha, would you like to say something?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, so it's very interesting. So I'm currently in the process of finishing my last level in French, and my professor is this wonderful lady from the University of Bordeaux, who's now working at Allianz Chandigarh for 2 years. I'm very lucky to have found her, and she's a retired professor of French literature. So we tend to sort of have a lot of tete-a-tete where we talk about my experience with English literature and her experience of French literature. And she was asking me about my research, which has to do with Rudyard Kipling. And she always brings up this very important point of context. She says we can judge literature, pick it out of a certain era and look at it from the lens of our understanding, our social mores and our understanding of morality today, and just destroy it and pick it apart. But seeing the text or in contextualizing it in the right age and in the right social setting is very important, just as ma'am you were saying. So having done that, something that I just thought I'd put out there is maybe that Petruchio fell in love with this woman, Katerina, and he tried to tame her because perhaps that was the only way he could sort of receive her love in the society that they lived in. That was the only acceptable way for them to be a couple in the society, for him to show that he was trying to tame her. So maybe at the end of the day, if we see it within that context, it is a story of love, and it is a story of a man trying to win the affection of a woman while being a part of his society, an acceptable part of his society.
He actually says something like that at one point. He says, you don't understand. He says, we have an agreement between us. We do this in front of everybody else, but in the bedroom, it's something else, So yeah, you've got your point right there. Anybody else? Shall we allow Sinasa to
enlighten us?
Yes, ma'am. Mala?
I said, yes, let him enlighten us.
Let him enlighten us. All right. Come on, Sinasa.
Okay. First of all, it was a brilliant performance. I must say, it was a wonderful show. You did a very fine job, very interesting, very fluent, wide-ranging, well-informed. That I must say. I have to confess that you did a wonderful job. That's one thing. Second thing, obviously, is that there are certain things you can build upon. Perhaps you already discussed them in the classroom. I would not know what you have done, what you haven't done. But I thought maybe there are things we should think about when the play is being staged or being discussed. And of course, to say in passing that Richard Burton and Liz Taylor acted so well because they acted in their own life. This is where their life was. Remember, they married each other 3 times and fought each other 3 times and separated. So that's one thing. Now, the first thing I want to say is the significance of the dream in the play. So the play is about a concept which perhaps goes back to the medieval concept. And Shakespeare, let's remember, was in certain ways medieval, in certain ways very, very modern. And that is life is a dream. That, of course, is a Christian idea. So that, I think, is something important which could be done. But the far more important issue is that we see how the play is being put up. No, we are from the very beginning told, here is a play. It's not reality. It's not a mirror of life. It's a play. And we observe the actors come there. We observe how they put things up. And that, remember, one of Shakespeare's concerns around this time. I mean, this appears in many plays, culminating, I guess, in Hamlet, unless there's something after Hamlet also, which shows it. Within limits, perhaps The Tempest.
Midsummer Night Dream?
Yeah, of course, earlier, lots of plays earlier. I said culminating in Hamlet.
Culminating, I didn't hear that.
As the last of them. So, we observe how the play is being put up, and that detaches us. And, we are, in a sense, outside the play. We don't really enter the play. never think of it as a mirror to life. And let's see. And then we observe the theme of sickness, because do remember that Sly is sick. By the way, we observe the significance of names. You know, for example, Christopher Sly or Bianca. In Italian, Bianca means the fair one. So Bianca is the fair one. Names are very important. You also observe the use of another language. Foreign language is used frequently in the play, partly to show off the knowledge of the so-called tutor, but basically the concern with the attempt to separate the speaker, from the audience, one way of creating detachment. Then we observe the significance of disguises. The play is absolutely concerned with disguises. Disguises at multiple levels. Sly being put in disguise, then after that, disguises at a metaphorical level. I should say Petruchio in disguise, Vincentio in disguise. In fact, all of the young people are in disguise. And even, shall I say, Bianca is disguised, and so is Kate. The inner self is different from the outer self. I think Shaw, if I'm not mistaken, called Petruchio a matrimonial adventurer. Let's compare him to Bassanio. I mean, you all have read Merchant of Venice. You see, Bassanio loves a girl who is truly adorable. I think Portia is one of the most brilliant heroines of Shakespeare. But Kate here is, in a way, someone who prepares for, I should say, for Portia. And then you must have observed the significance of puns in the play, what we call double entendre. So I think it's a remarkably rich play. Frankly, I never thought highly of the early plays, but when I went back to it, and when I heard Snober was talking, I decided to go back to it, although I could not reread the entire play, but I could see so much appearing just in the first two acts of the play. So I think the play has a lot to offer. And let's remember what I should have said earlier. Shakespeare is a very, very modern writer. I mean, no theory is able to throw Shakespeare out of the gear. Milton can be forgotten. People like Ben Jonson can be forgotten, but Shakespeare cannot be forgotten. People like Jan Kort are absolutely right. So I think the play is richer than at least I initially thought. And I'm glad Snober has done an excellent job in giving us insights into the play. And the videos, of course, are very, very interesting. Thank you, Snober.
Thank you, Sinasa. So I put down quickly some of the things that did bother me. One is, the way Kate will tie up. There is a scene where Kate will tie up her sister and will, want to hit her. And then Kate says something so terrible. She says, when her father comes in and says, "What have you done to your sister?" She says, "I know this is what you want. You want that, I will, dance with apes at a wedding," and, something like that. Where, that's what the myth was at that time, that if you did not get married, then apes would accompany you after you died into heaven or whatever, which is how much pressure there was on a woman to get married. Of course, the father's open partiality towards his younger daughter, for me, is so disturbing. Then, of course, this question of dowry, it's so openly, what dowry will you give? Petruchio says, for me to marry Caterina. But when Bianca is to get a husband, because she's so in demand, the father will ask for a bride price. Who will pay the most? And the reason why Hortensio loses out is because he's not rich enough. And then, of course, the dower, which is that when the husband dies, the money that goes back to the wife. Petruccio's open mercenary intentions about money, the way Petruccio treats Catherine, in under the guise of loving her, the meat is not cooked, she's starving, he'll bring it in front of her, the meat is not cooked, and he'll throw it off. But having said that, the way Petruccio will treat his servant Grumio and other poor people, which, tells you the way rich people treated poor people at that time, which is also something to think about. And how much has this changed today? How much has this changed today? And of course, Kate's last speech, when you listen to the content, at one level, it is about love, but it's also about, she says, my husband says, I'm ready to put my hand beneath his feet, if he asks that of me, which is, of course, I think things to think about. I don't think Shakespeare at any level is supporting it. We always talk about drama as being mimetic, literature as being mimetic, which is it shows, it doesn't tell. So he's not going to get out there and tell you, hey, this is wrong and this is bad. He's going to put it out there on stage and hope that as intelligent people, when you go home, you're disturbed and you think about it. And then hopefully you do something about that. And that's what I'd like to take away from this play. And we have gone a little over 1 hour. And so with that, I would say, Mohini.
Snober, fabulous. It was great. I so loved it. And it so totally pointed to the fact that I just haven't read this play well enough. It never was in any syllabus that I had anything to do with, But of course, it's always been there as an extreme example, let us say, that you need to read and recontextualize in today's times and think about, and you've shown that very beautifully. So like I said, folks, she's so marvelous, isn't she?
Mohini, I want to say something because I saw Shraddha over there and you said recontextualize. So I didn't teach Shraddha Romeo and Juliet, but she inspired me to teach Romeo and Juliet. And when I taught it as, in the sense that young, impetuous, kids, and as one girl cried out in class, why couldn't they just wait? But after COVID, I kind of thought differently. We'd been under lockdown, and I thought of, people who are alone, who had been sort of been kept in a small space. And then suddenly things open up, and that sense of urgency and that sense of panic. And I suddenly looked at Romeo and Juliet completely differently, because that was the time of the plague. The reason why, all right, Romeo doesn't get the message is because the priest who's carrying the message is grabbed and put in lockdown because they think that he's met someone with the plague. Or that I thought of these two young people who had been in lockdown, Juliet's never been out. All right. And therefore, suddenly it's not stupid young people who can't wait. It's people who have been through a huge trauma, that we went through with COVID. And I looked at the play completely differently, and I taught it completely differently when I re-prescribed it like some 5 years later. So I think that's the greatness about Shakespeare. You recontextualize it,
yes,
and it's completely different.
No, absolutely, that is so true. So that's why he's, still our #1 man after so many years. Yeah, amazing. Okay. So, Prashant, thank you so much for all your insights.
It's not very clear to me how similar it is, that plague and what we went through are there. Yes, there were some you had a plague and this thing, just hundreds of people dying, and no medical help for them, and that's it. But otherwise, the thinking process of people of that generation and of this generation, there is a great difference.
Of course, of course. That is why he is dated in a certain way. But again, Satish, meaning never lies with the text. Meaning lies with us and what we bring to the text. So,
Always.
yeah.
Because
So
what Moini talks and what I talk, we talk differently. And Chetan is not there. Otherwise, Chetan would love to say how Moini and I keep on arguing with each other on a topic of the literature. Anyway, so going ahead, what I feel that I think there's a modernity to it in that sense. They looked at what happened then is quite similar in many ways there. And like people were being thrown into jail, etc., etc., is what we have done down here, my dear. And right now we are aware of it. That's why we care about it. So it is there. We'll talk about it later, guys. You take it up. I'm not part of this literature thing. Go on, no.
Yeah, okay.
And
Now, I'm inviting other people now to weigh in. So who would like to speak up? Runa, I'm sure you would like to.
She has disappeared from the picture, so I'm asking you to catch her.
I find this play, it has a lot of contradictory elements in it. And I remember when I was a student, I actually bothered to go through it because the theme was so appealing. I had read it in Lamb's Tales, and I said I must read the original. So I went through it. But there are things which shocked me, and they shock me now even more. Like as you said, Snober brought out all the poems which are very disturbing. But today I also flicked through the play just to refresh the feel and flavor. And one thing occurred to me, in all these portrayals of the play, the only problem Catherine displayed was she spoke. She spoke bluntly, and she spoke when most people stay quiet, right? So that was her only sin, to display a certain independence of mind.
Runa, I have to interrupt. She did break stools on people's heads.
That's
And
because she got frustrated, but she didn't do it wantonly. As you said, she
I
didn't
agree with
suffer
you.
fools gladly. She didn't suffer fools gladly, and yet she's probably one of the most intelligent people around. And she finds people all fussing around, doing all right. Even her parents and her father, they're all fools, basically, So, and these men also falling in love with Bianca and going, in this stupid way. So you imagine a person who has a great independence of mind and who finds fools surrounded by fools, and she's impatient, she's frustrated, and then you contextualize. In those days, they had no other way of expressing themselves. So in temper and frustration, as you said, and that was it. And I feel Petruchio probably had the stuff in him to be a fitter mate than all these other guys, but he could have treated her differently. I don't think the way he tamed her was I mean, in the 21st century, we can't stomach it.
Yeah. Runa, I come back to you. You are saying that, fools, you're surrounded by fools. And are you doing anything about it?
I beg your pardon?
And are you doing anything about being surrounded by fools who are behaving the way they are?
So, it's very difficult now, Satish. That's the whole point. You just feel frustrated, and then you sort of tilt at windmills. What else can you do?
No, and that's where literature comes in. I had said this earlier, that when things are not good, there are problems around of varied kind, you put it all down in literature. And that's where the best books come from. You look at what I came after the 20s crash down in New York. After that, and the Second World War, lots of good literature came around. And that's what I think, I hope we will do so with what's happening now. Snober, up to you again.
Sorry for I want to tell Runa that what I find so disturbing is that till date, the way men treat intelligent women,
Yes.
I don't think is that different.
No, it's not.
It's not. And maybe they're more passive aggressive right now, and they won't do it in that. I just wanted to put down, I had made.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Right now, the fascism is very strong, and
Yeah.
who are women to tell us differently?
Yeah, yeah. So the play does mirror the attitudes of that time. Also, like I said, you typically had this stock character of the scolding wife. In play, we had it in Hindi cinema also. All right. Shakespeare treats his shrew with far more dignity. And at the end of the play, we really do fall in love with Catherine, and she gets our sympathy, which is something remarkable. And also the game mode, you must understand that although we say it's a diverse audience, it was primarily men that were watching the play. Now, Shakespeare's a businessman. His play has to sell. So he's not going to mess with his pay.
No, and also, certain things were expected of him. So all his plays are within a certain format. What is astonishing and what is a credit to his creativity and originality of thought is, he bursts the boundaries of those formats. He fits it in so that, you can just take it as is at face value, or it can make you think.
And those were very dangerous times.
Absolutely, absolutely.
For playwrights. I mean, I'm not going to say it's any different.
He had to kowtow to the royalty for whom he played, all his histories. Yep.
Or he could be hung, drawn, and quartered. So, one had to do it in whatever way one did it. And he does a great job. Yeah.
True. Yeah, so thank you, Runa, for that. Now, who else would like to speak up? Priyana, what about you?
I was suggesting Vinay Pal is there. She was a professor.
Yes, I want to get to everybody.
She was a professor of English in IIT, head of department there. She's the one person. And Mala Rian is adding quietly.
Yes.
She's the other person.
Good evening.
So Vinay Paul was my classmate years and years back. Vinay, we want to hear you. Don't run away. I can see you there.
I am on, but unfortunately, I missed a large part because I had gone swimming. So I'm not able to comment on it, but I know that it was a brilliant, Snober did a great job. I could hear the end and I respect that. And I really wish I had read the play just now so that I could say something. Sorry, next time.
Okay.
Hey, what about Vinay?
Vinay, we want you to come, speak. Vinay followed up Mohini left, right, and said, please, how do I get in touch with you? And finally, she's keeping quiet.
Vinay, let's hear you.
Vismi, you take over and tell these young things that they're not doing their work.
Okay, that was Vinay on the phone.
Okay.
She's been very unwell. She says she's on bed rest, and please excuse her. Okay. She's enjoyed the presentation. You said something about Shakespeare being a bit daunting. Yes, I do see what you mean. That, people are a little wary of offering an opinion on the great Shakespeare. How dare they? Who are they? They are nobody, that sort of thing.
Rashida,
can you? Yes, there she is. Now, Rashida was my MA student last year, and
she's been a book club member for last 15 years.
Oh no, this is Rashida Karu. Okay. I thought Rashida Jivanji. Okay. Rashida Jivanji was
Rashidas are there. Both. Rashida Karu is Ume Salama, who's come on her mother's name. And Rashida...
it's you.
Yes, and Rashida Jivanji is also there. She put on her mic and then she put it back off again.
Okay. Anyway, so Ume, what about you? I'm sure you have an opinion here.
I'm sorry, I joined in a little late, but I feel with Shakespeare, what he does very well is he's giving his opinion, but he's not giving his opinion.
Go on.
There's a sort of distance in his plays, and I think that goes with Taming of the Shrew as well. And what Snober ma'am said, that we are sympathetic of Catherine by the end of the play, and I think that expresses his ability as a playwright.
because in the time that he was writing, he couldn't have expressed his personal opinion out loud, but he still manages to do it.
Yeah, he couldn't come out and say, "Oh, I like this Shrew. She has some points worth listening to." He couldn't say that. Of course, yes, indeed.
I think this generation is more politically correct than that was. I know that the punishments were probably harsher, but I don't think that people thought as much about things as we do. We worry so much and we can't speak this and we can't say that. I very much doubt that people in that generation cared.
But it was yes or no. I think it was very much like this. That yes, we have to keep quiet and shut up there. No, this is wrong, and I'm going to speak. It's just one line. We, as while the world is going on and on, we have umpteen जैसे करूँ क्या नहीं आगे देखेंगे फिर देखेंगे ऐसा होता है. So I would rather feel that they have said yes. If I say something, I'll get my head chopped off, kind of stuff. Okay, who's to come?
Yeah. See, Satish, the point about those days and our days, we have to also, make allowance for thoughts which have changed over the years, philosophies. You see, in those days, it was it was almost a feudal society. Class was very important.
It
Wealth
was a
was
feudal
important.
society.
Social stratification was much more rigid. And democracy is a very new concept. Real democracy has only come after Second World War, not even before that. I mean, First World War, according to me, was all about trying to maintain the old world order where there was a lot of stratification. And Second World War sort of busted all that. And yeah, so you have, and look, democracy is struggling around the world.
Right. Anyone? Friana?
I think what Runa said is very important. Even Karl Marx says that for there to be exploitation, there must be awareness of exploitation. So at least now there is awareness and we're talking about it. Yeah. But at that time, this is so important what she said. The ideology and the brainwashing was so all-encompassing that they didn't
was the way
see
things
it.
were. Yeah.
Yes, it was like that. That was how it was. Yeah. Correct.
What about Uma? Is there somewhere?
Wait, I just asked Rihanna, so let me just see if she would like to say something. Rihanna, would you like to?
Okay.
Yes? Okay, let's have Rihanna first then. Then we go on to Uma.
I think Shakespeare is one of my most favorite writers so far because...
Talk a little louder, better.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. This is better.
Yeah. Shakespeare was, I think, one of the first writers I was actually introduced to, like, in a proper formal setting, in the sense not in classes or something, but when I was having a very healthy discussion with some of my friends in school. And they said, have you read a proper play by Shakespeare? And I had not, because in SSC schools, we had those Lamb's Tales and short stories, and your teachers would give you some short briefs and things like that. So I think one of the first writers I actually picked up to read for myself was Shakespeare. And to say it went horribly wrong was an understatement, because at that point I could not understand Heads or Tails of Shakespeare in 6th standard and 7th standard. It was difficult for me. But I was too early. And then I met writers like Wordsworth and Keats, and I started to love the simplicity of the language and the simplicity of the idea, the imagination, and that's how it flowed with me. And then I was reintroduced to Shakespeare back again in college, where I think we did Romeo and Juliet with Snober ma'am again, and as she said, she made it sound like this very enchanting tale of two lovers who were, just dying to be with each other. And I, for one person who did not like Romeo and Juliet at all, I fell in love with Romeo and Juliet when ma'am taught it. So I revisited these other plays. I revisited Taming of the Shrew. I think Moini ma'am, we both did Hamlet and the other plays. So I think the magic about Shakespeare is that even if once you understand the way he presents his point, it is difficult to ignore the point, in the sense that the very crux of his stories, the very ideas of his stories are not stereotypical, and they're not very something that you will come across in your everyday life. They are very different. And to understand something different, I think he needed that space of uh, a platform like drama, where everything magical and everything imaginary can be presented to you in that format. So I think even with Taming of the Shrew, the idea is very different, something we are not familiar with, something we look at and we are like, what is happening? Why is someone treating a woman like that? Or why is a man doing this in the first place? And there are many multiple questions which come across throughout the plot of the play. But I think Shakespeare, in his magical, mystical style, has presented the answers within the play itself. He has presented why every character does what they do. So I think that is the magic of Taming of the Shrew, and I think that was very well, as always, presented by Snober ma'am in her presentation today.
Thank you. There is Uma.
Uma is right there. Uma, come in, please.
Yes, I would just like to say that when I read these plays, it was a long time back, I was totally fascinated by the wonderful universe of characters and places and
We lost
everything else which he has created. And coming to this play in particular, I just enjoyed it as a comedy. I was really too young to relate to all the, the politics or the social aspects of it. But I just loved it as much as I loved As You Like It or Merchant of Venice. So in a different way, this play also was a total comedy, which delighted me at that age, 18 or 20, within that age. And I thought that this was a wonderful experience where I met so many different kinds of people and characters and behaving in different ways. So I really didn't relate. But today, I think that too much meaning is being read to it into all these plays, and too much is being made of psychology, and I still want to go back and read the plays with that fresh mind with which I read it at that early age.
Okay.
Can I speak up? Snober Moini, can I speak up?
Yeah, go on.
My reading was completely of the modern times there. Books which were written in the 20s and onwards, I felt closer to them, read a lot about them, read them a lot. And it is only after getting, I had read Shakespeare, but उस जमाने में मैंने लिया नहीं था as a something around. I met a woman who slowly converted me to understanding what Shakespeare had to say, and that was Moini. Moini was the one who got me to think, look at that, look at this, etc. Of course, I never said that, yes, let me think, but I quietly was able to absorb what Shakespeare said or what it felt, what can be today's times. He talks about today's times, and particularly the one in Merchant of Venice, where they talk about don't we bleed, etc. That hit me very, very hard, that there is something like that that's happening around and that we have to take care. So Moini was the one who got me thinking, like you did, Snober, for your girls here. I was saying Moini took a lot more time to educate me about Shakespeare. Don't laugh. I can see Shraddha laughing.
Actually, I got carried away by the language, by the descriptions, by the verbal picturization.
Yes.
We know that there was no background and all that, what we have today in cinemas. So the words themselves imprinted themselves, on my mind.
Uma, to me, the word was a very important thing. And if it is down there, that meant it was more truer than what the film showed or anything showed there. So that's what I looked at, and quietly she had. I must tell you this. She had this huge book on Shakespeare, all Shakespeare plays, and I used to quietly go and read through them, etc., etc. But the best thing was Mohini bought Sonal, my Sonal daughter, a book about Shakespeare, this thing, etc., and gave it to Sonal on her birthday. And she said, she asked Sonal, saying, "How did you like that?" She said, "That was nice, but I read that Mama's thick book." So she had gone at the age of 11 through the thick book of Mama's. Anyway, Mo, take over now. And
yeah, I think we should begin to wind up now. It's been a very good session. I do think Shraddha has her hand up. Yes, I know. I'm just coming to her. But I just want to say this, that Snober, every time I make grand claims for you, that she's this and she's that, and you always manage to, outdo yourself. So you're even more than what I said you were. So you did it again. I enjoyed it so much. So very much. Thank you so much.
Mohini is my teacher. So credit goes to her.
Well, this will be absolutely lovely. I enjoyed it. Okay, so now we come to Shraddha. Where has Shraddha gone from my screen?
I'm here, ma'am. I'm right here.
Shraddha.
So
Yes,
if Mohini ma'am was Snober ma'am's teacher, then Mohini ma'am and Snober ma'am, it's my privilege to say, were my teachers. So for me, it's like a major homecoming whenever any of them give a talk. So, and my question doesn't have to do, isn't revolving much around a comment, as it is a true question from a student. Whenever and I think Freyanna also sort of remarked upon this, that when we read Shakespeare in solitude, it never hits the same way. At least as from personal experience, the way I watch a play, or maybe in the case of Shakespeare, I haven't had the opportunity to watch the play as much as we perhaps see a film based on it, or discuss the play in class, or be taught the play. The effect that has is never the same as when I'm sitting alone and trying to read the play. I just personally speaking of my experience with, say, Othello, I'm enjoying it, but it's not hitting me the way it should. Because at the end of the day, drama is a very social activity. You sit in an audience, you read off other people's body language, their reactions, the way probably the actors perhaps make eye contact with you, or their body language itself, which doesn't come through in a solitary reading of words on a page. So as teachers, I would like to ask you, what is your advice for people who just pick up the play and read it by themselves? How should they get the most out of it? It's always trumped me. I've never been able to by myself. And I feel that's quite a tragedy, because there's so many great plays and you can't be taught them all. So what is your advice?
Shall I tell you the advice of the senior-most person down here? Marry that person.
What?
How many?
I know.
Okay.
No,
Mo and Snober, go ahead. Respond to
I think
Shraddha.
Prashant and Snober, yeah.
Okay, Prashant.
Prashant, first to you.
No, actually, I said what I had to say about the presentation. I just wanted to add about the videos. The videos showed that the play is much more than the words in the page. The videos brought out so much, that the words on the page don't quite bring out. In fact, there is a renewed interest in what we call text and performance. And since one must know what one's, I should say, enemies say, I'm reading carefully J.B. Burton's highly, jargonistic book, in which he points out how the actors bring out so much, that the words on the page cannot convey.
Drama.
Absolutely. Well, drama is obviously meant to be watched on stage. And whenever we read a play in class, I always remind the girls that remember, and you're not going to be able to sort of, like I say, okay, now let's talk about this a bit. Why does he say this? Why is there a pause? Why is there a silence? Why didn't so-and-so respond? So in the theater, you're not going to get that time. The action is moving on. How can you do your best reading a play by yourself? It's just, as I think, constantly reminding yourself that it's happening on stage. This is something that is moving. Okay. And sometimes the stage directions. Now, some playwrights give a lot of stage directions and some just don't. But then you have to imagine it on stage. You have to imagine it as a live performance. And I think that's the best you can do. Also, I found that, books like the case books, collections have reviews, right? They have reviews of performances of particular productions. And if you read those, you get a pretty good idea of how one particular performance was and what it brought out and what another, and it gets you thinking. And it sort of shows you what the actors must be doing while they're acting. And I think it clues you in a lot more. So reading a play and reminding yourself that this is theater. It's not a novel, it's theater, it's happening. That's the best you can do. I mean, what else? Snober, tell us anything more.
So when it's a smaller group of students, then we sit in a circle.
Yeah, we read. I mean, we do
read
that.
the play. Yeah. So I would say, and I have had a lot of fun with my son. He studied Taming of the Shrew, and we would read the play together.
Yeah, we do that in class.
It's so fun. So
yes, it makes a big difference.
But it's hard to get like-minded people who'd like to sit and read with you. You could read out loud, but I know that's not the same as reading with someone. And
so in class, I mean, students take the roles, so you have those different voices. But Shraddha, what you said, on your own, reading a play on your own, you just have to try to put yourself in that position and remind yourself that this is something you are watching, not just reading.
Yeah, and think about how you would stage the play. You should have fun, think that you're the director and how you're going to stage the play, and think about how you'd want that character to perform. And I love what Uma said, which is we must not forget how hysterically funny watching Taming of the Shrew is. Because you see the nonverbals, you see the high comedy is, of course, in the dialogues, but there's good old-fashioned low comedy of tripping and falling and bumping and all of that stuff, it's a stress buster.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's appealing.
And each actor brings his own take on it. So this different actors will do a different Kate or a different Petruchio, and you can never replicate that. If you have a very vivid imagination, it's better, but it's still not the best as far as drama is concerned.
Yeah, there's no substitute for actually going to the theater and watching the play.
A few weeks ago, I picked up a copy. I just found it by chance of Waiting for Godot. And I found it so different, this reading, from what I had read.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
So as you read again and again the same thing, the more you read it, the more you repeat your familiarity with it, the more information you get, the more pleasure you get out of it.
Yeah, and because you have changed, in that much time. It's a new you reading that text. So you're relating to it differently.
That's why I said I enjoyed the freshness of reading when I was, still 18 years old.
A small word for me. At the age of 76, I still find Shakespeare saying something which is very, very apt. And look into it and do it. I've written a book. I've written Exits and Entrances, which is part of, comes from a Shakespeare quote. Mohini, and I married Mohini, of course. That was the reason why Shakespeare became one of. Don't laugh. Shraddha, don't laugh.
I agree. I have to tell you, by the way.
We know
I'm sure everybody here knows that Satish has written a book of plays, right? 8 plays. And one was staged, it did well, it got good reviews. Another one had a dramatic reading because by then the lockdown had set in, we couldn't perform it. Now, the third one, that is Waiting, which Snober is the one that you had talked about at the launch, if you remember, the last play in the book, was taken by a theatre group in Chennai and entered into a theatre festival, a contest. And, we were excited that someone wanted to put up that play, that someone had noticed it. Frankly, that was enough, that someone noticed it, they wanted to do it, and they entered it into this. And guess what? I mean, there are prizes for best play, best director, best actor, you know, all that kind of stuff. Satish got the best play award. I'm so thrilled. I'm really thrilled. I'm so thrilled. Just sorry and all that.
Congratulations to both sir and ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so let us wind up now. And Snober, outstanding presentation, absolutely outstanding. Everyone here enjoyed it so much. You reminded us of a text which had sort of fallen by the wayside, you know. I'm sure most of us haven't looked at it or thought about it for a very long time. And you reminded us and the issues that it raises, which is, you know, yeoman service from your side. And thank you so much. And come again and present something more to us. Okay?
Rashida has a hand up.
Oh, does she? Okay. Yes, Rashida.
I've not read, I've not seen or read this play, but what I feel is remarkable about Shakespeare is that um, he makes you think, he makes you cry, or he makes you laugh, and he can do that for every strata of the society. Because just last week we had a priest doing a sermon for us, and he quoted from Macbeth and some of Shakespeare's poems. And even though nobody had read Shakespeare, they were all thinking about what Shakespeare said. So I think that is very interesting. I've never seen that happen for any other playwright, because he keeps quoting others too. What I feel is that if something similar was done with Waiting for Godot, if he quoted from that, probably nobody would be able to understand what he's trying to do. But with Shakespeare, most of the times, our groups, the small chats we have, everybody is able to understand at least some part of it. So yeah, that is what I wanted to share.
True.
Thank you.
This happened last week. Yeah.
Thank you, Rashida.
The universality of Shakespeare, right?
Exactly.
The universality. Absolutely. That's why he survived so long. Okay. So now let me just mention what we have in the coming sessions. Okay. Right. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Happy reading, happy discussing, happy thinking above all, which is what books make you do.
And thank you,
Bye.
Snober.
Bye for
Very
now.
good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. All the very best.